Welcome to the top 10 stories from 4 Construction Pros this week. I'm Larry Stewart with 4 Construction Pros.
I'm Jessica Lombardo with Asphalt Contractor Magazine.
Number 10 on our list was a story about spending on non-residential building construction, expecting to decline throughout 2021. The American Institute of Architects 2021 consensus forecast expects steep declines this year in construction spending on office buildings, hotels, and amusement and recreation centers. Healthcare and public safety are the only major sectors that are slated to produce gains in 2021. And architectural activity is a really interesting thing to follow because it tends to precede construction spending by about 12 months. So these architects know what's coming up. Good story to take a look at and find out what's going on.
Another great story is the 2021 State of the Construction Industry, and it's a forecast for uncertain times. So our senior editor, Kurt Bennick, he has released the Equipment Today State of the Construction Industry report, and it has some exclusive insight into what this year might hold. And as you plan your upcoming year, this article features conversations with some construction industry experts and some of the most trusted sources about what they see for the months to come.
And number 8 on the list is researchers developing a hard hat device to track construction workers' movements. So Mafic is a company that builds technology, and they're partnering with the University of Southampton in England to develop wearable technology for hard hats that improve safety and progress on projects. Safety Guard's a wearable device that fits inside a hard hat and uses the global navigation satellite system to capture movement and gets data from equipment, materials, and input from construction workers. The thing uses machine learning to recognize workers' movements and patterns while they're completing tasks, and it records them so that you can really find out what's happening on job sites.
That's super interesting. I wonder how long it'll be till that type of technology is everywhere.
Yeah, it's like tracking the work on an assembly line. You can really find out what's going on.
Number 7 this week are the 4 factors that will affect equipment availability and pricing in 2021. So this is another article that kind of attempts to help you plan for the new year. And it comes from RDO Equipment's Dennis Howard. It offers some thoughts on what is going to affect the equipment availability and pricing and the industry as a whole in the months ahead. And just as political and economic factors had a big influence on the industry last year, they're going to do so again this year.
All right, number 6 on the list, 5 predictions for an unpredictable 2021. Paul Wilson from off-road telematics company ZTR predicts that since the pandemic catapulted construction technology demand forward, connectivity and adoption is going to play a much bigger role in unlocking valuable services in the construction world. You should check that out. The world's really changing fast with what's happened with the pandemic.
Yeah, and technology, it's only going to help this year as people are kind of struggling to find that competitive edge. Like, look to technology to see where it can kind of help you fill in those gaps.
Right. And that adoption curve, has really leaped forward with demand for minimizing the number of people on project sites. And all those technologies, they're not pandemic technologies. They're productivity technologies.
Yeah, and the pandemic has just kind of accelerated acceptance of it, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So number 5 this week is self-erecting tower cranes could change the home construction industry. And so this article talks about how these machines are allowing contractors to use them on job sites that have restricted space and state regulation. And Pinetop Custom Homes use Manitowoc's POTAIN self-erecting tower crane on a single-family home project in Idaho. And the use of this type of crane will allow the company to do more home building projects in the future based on the efficiency of the machines.
Yeah, that crane's really interesting. And, people don't think about tower cranes on home construction sites, but they're small, they transport easily, and they go up by themselves. Some of the barriers to using a tower crane are eliminated, and you've got all that reach. I saw a story not too long ago where there was a developer who had a couple of lots next to each other, and he was working on 2 homes with 1 crane. And that was an interesting story, too. Number 4 on the list. So Joe Biden's fast start on inauguration last week understandably drew a lot of attention from contractors, and you'll see that here on the list. One of Biden's first actions was to revoke the cross-border presidential permit required to continue building the beleaguered Keystone XL pipeline, which the Keystone XL president says will eliminate 1,000 union construction jobs, actually. Anticipating the move, the owner of the pipeline, TC Energy Corporation, announced early in the week that it would spend $1.7 billion on a solar, wind, and battery-powered operating system for the pipeline to ensure it's zero emissions, and also run it with union labor. But that doesn't diminish the facts that the tar sands crude this pipe will be carrying for export from North America is some of the dirtiest energy in the oil business. So it's an interesting balance there. Biden has a pro-union record, and people have really been talking about these 1,000 union jobs. And I think that it's a matter of, protecting union jobs at what cost? Interesting story.
And I know that a lot of the construction industry is kind of concerned about, what this Biden presidency will look like. And he wants to talk about climate change. He wants to help the industry move forward in that way. So it'll be interesting to see what the next 4 years hold. And the number 3 story, it also talks about Biden and how he's expected to raise taxes to fight COVID-19 and its economic battering. So when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 was signed, it spurred the country's soaring national debt and created a reflective decrease in the government's ability to respond to last year's recession. The Congressional Budget Office, it estimates the legislation's provisions will increase the deficit $1.3 trillion over 10 years. So during his campaign, Biden indicated that he would work to roll back the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that Democrats considered to be budget-busting tax breaks for corporations and high net worth individuals. And this article kind of discusses the details of those potential tax increases.
So number 2 on the list, Biden's Buy American executive order and its impact on construction and manufacturing. Biden pointed out that the Defense Department spent $3 billion on foreign construction contracts bypassing American steel and iron, and spent also nearly $300 million on foreign engines and vehicles just in 2018. Instead of buying American vehicles, American engines from American companies putting Americans to work, the order tightens the existing Buy American policies and goes further by setting up clear directives and clear explanation. And it also creates a Buy American czar at the Office of Management and Budget to review and coordinate efforts by government agencies.
Yeah, that was a really interesting story to write because President Trump, he was big on Buy American too, but this just takes it a step further to make sure that, the provisions that we're putting in place are being followed through with and that we are really buying American and making sure that that is important to all members of the federal government. So the number 1 most read story on forconstructionpros.com this week is also dealing with Biden and how his blizzard of day one orders impact construction. And after he was inaugurated last week, he signed 17 executive actions that very afternoon. And he was moving urgently against what he called the converging crisis. And that includes the pandemic, the struggling economy, immigration and diversity issues, and the environment. And every day this week, he has signed executive orders related to each of those issues, including that Buy American order, which we're going to follow because we know that that will impact the construction industry further.
Thanks so much, Jess. I appreciate your help. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Hope you have a great weekend, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.